Just in the last 2 months, though, we've seen some pretty dramatic changes and additional uncertainties with the US activities both in Venezuela at the beginning of January and then the current situation that's unfolding in the Middle East. So that backdrop of uncertainty is very much the framework within which we're looking at the issue of US-Japan energy cooperation today. Discussion will be moderated by Mike Herberg, who's a professor at the University of California, San Diego, and a longtime research director for NBR's Energy Security Program.
The last 15 years is really a tale of two cities, or a tale of two countries in terms of energy security and resilience. Japan has spent 15 years recovering from the Fukushima tragedy, the loss of, for a long time, all of its nuclear generating capacity, which really provoked one of the worst, maybe perhaps the worst energy security crisis for Japan since the 1970s. And it spent the last 15 years with LNG and other fuels trying to reconstruct as strong an energy security base as possible. LNG, as I said, been the key to that. The U.S., in a sense, just the opposite. We've spent the last 15 years building an enormous oil production machine and an enormous natural gas production machine based on all that shale oil and gas development. So we're essentially self-sufficient in oil, crude oils, and products, and have become the world's largest exporter of LNG. So in a sense, it's a match made in heaven. LNG is critical to Japan. The U.S. now an enormous exporter of LNG, also a huge exporter of crude oil, although net importer-exporter. So really a tale of two countries, but that, in a sense, is the perfect basis for partnership cooperation as we go forward. We have two fabulous experts to discuss prospects from both the Japanese and the U.S. perspective on this. From Japan, Ken Koyama, Senior Managing Director and Chief Economist in charge of the Research Strategy Unit at the Institute of Energy Economics, Japan. From the U.S. side, Kurt Glaubitz, co-founder of the Asia Natural Gas Energy and Energy Association, ANGEA for short, and president of Glaubitz Energy Advisory, LLC.
We in Japan always continue to work on the strategic energy plan to be revised in every 3 years. This strategic energy plan have so-called S+3E principles: safety, energy security, environmental protection, and economic efficiency, which should be pursued and materialized in simultaneous way. And the latest version, of course, has a S+3 principle, including the very aspirational, ambitious target to reduce GHG emission reduction in the year 2040 by 73% as compared to the level of 2013. But in reality, the most important challenge for the latest version of SEP is enhanced energy security, or in other words, to secure a stable energy supply at affordable price. This is a seriously important challenge for us in Japan, but probably in the United States and everywhere in the world. And under the circumstance that the security of LNG supply is regarded highly important. And as a first attempt of the strategic energy plan, the latest version includes so-called strategic plan B, which means that if our aspirational target cannot be met by some difficulties, for example, difficulty to realize that the very challenging target to increase the renewable capacity, something must fill the gap between the aspirational target and reality. And the answer to this strategic plan B is the increase in LNG. I think in the context of surviving in the difficult and unpredictable world, the security of LNG is regarded highly important in the current strategic energy plan. And another very important policy priority is given to nuclear power. The latest version has a kind of historic shift in nuclear policy. After Fukushima disaster, every time that the strategic energy plan was revised, the government of Japan continued to declare that we need to reduce nuclear dependence as much as possible. But for the first time after the nuclear disaster, the SEP, Strategic Energy Plan, clearly identified we need to maximize the use of nuclear power.
So we can look at the relationship between the US and Japan on three levels. First, from a foreign policy perspective, the US sees energy as a key component in its diplomatic efforts. The US understands that energy security is essential for Japan and the Indo-Pacific region, and that many nations are dependent on imports and also vulnerable to potential supply disruptions. And just as US LNG came to the aid of Europe after the Ukraine invasion, so too does this administration see oil and gas shipments as supporting allies in Asia. And then secondly, if we look at this from a defense perspective, the US administration sees energy security, economic security, and national security as inextricably linked. They are asking and hoping that allies will build resilience, and that could be within their oil and gas supply chains, or as Koyama-san mentioned, in nuclear energy as well. This is important also for the US to ensure uninterrupted fuel supplies that foster its defense efforts and the military exercises that it conducts within the region. And then third, the relationship is important from a trade perspective. And this is what we've seen from last year's agreement that took place. In fact, energy has been central to all the trade agreements that the Trump administration has pursued, whether that's the EU, India, or Japan. And certainly the Japanese agreement was a milestone for this administration.
LNG is a core focus of our work this year. Nuclear energy and SMRs is another area of focus. And the supply chain security issues that were touched upon briefly are a third. And so for those of you who are following those sets of questions in the energy security and energy geopolitics space, please stay tuned. We'll have more events and more publications coming later this year.